So I had a knock on my door the other day, and I look out the window, and I can see that it's 2 Jehovah's Witnesses. And I said, sweet. And so I went out on the porch, and I think I'm going to have to set up a camera on a tripod so I can capture these conversations. They asked me if they could talk to me for a few minutes, and I said, absolutely. And they said, do you ever think about the meaning of life, or the purpose of life? And I said, yeah, all the time. And they said, well, what do you think it is? I said, well, I'm not sure. What do you think it is? So they said, well, can we read you this from the Bible? And I said, absolutely. And so they read from Genesis. I said, well, that's cool, but you know, I've got questions. And they said, okay, well, shoot. And I said, well, for starters, your book there says that during the crucifixion, the sun was darkened over all the earth for 3 hours. And the guy in the back, he says, oh, you mean like an eclipse? And I said, no. An eclipse is just a few minutes. This says for 3 hours. And he said, does it really say that? And his friend said, yeah, it says that. And I said, let me get this straight. You're knocking on my door with this book, and you don't even know about the 3 hours of darkness over all the earth. This is your big moment here, your savior, this event, and you don't even know about the 3 hours? Wow. So I tell the other guy, look, if this were true, everyone on the planet would have put this on paper. This would be documented everywhere. And clearly, that is not the case at all. And so, how do you explain this? And he said, well, I've never thought about that. Maybe we just haven't discovered this documentation yet. And I said, well, to me, that's ridiculous. And I told him, on another note, I don't subscribe to the devaluation and disrespect of women that we see in the Bible at every turn. And I recite chapter and verse of what I'm talking about. I tell him, look at 1 Corinthians 14, 34 and 35. When Paul is talking about how to run the churches, he says, women are not allowed to speak in the churches. It is a disgrace if they do. If they have a question, they can go home and ask their husband later. And again, 1 Timothy 2:12, I do not allow women to teach. And so they start trying to explain how this doesn't actually mean what it says. And there are examples of women in the Bible teaching and doing things. And I said, yeah, that's what I call a contradiction in the Bible. And I asked him, are you guys researchers? Have you read the Mayan Popol Vuh? No. Have you read the Epic of Gilgamesh? No. Have you read the Egyptian coffin texts? No. I said, exactly. You stick with that book from the Jews. That's all you're focused on. And you don't even know about the 3 hours of darkness. And yet you're knocking on my door to tell me about it. This supposed crucifixion and resurrection. And so anyone who is a Christian unwittingly, perhaps, gives a thumbs up to God in the Old Testament ordering the slaughter of innocent men, women, and children. They give a thumbs up to that. And all the other awful things that God ordered them to do, allegedly, they give a thumbs up to that. They give a thumbs up to women being devalued in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. They subscribe to these ideas and concepts, and the levels that they practice these ideas and concepts vary. But I do not subscribe to the devaluation of women. You can try to explain all day long how these texts don't mean what they say, but they are very clear. These ideas and concepts are very clear. And I do not turn the other cheek. And I do not see myself as a sinner in need of forgiveness. And you can't deny that the waters are muddy. This is why there's 1,000 denominations, because there's so much disagreement about these texts and the interpretations. And so if God has left us in muddy waters amongst superior, interdimensional, evil beings under the threat of eternal torture, then he does not deserve worship. And I will go to hell knowing that I have better morality and ethics than God. But I tell you, there is no hell. There is no God sending billions to eternal torture because they couldn't figure it out in this short lifetime. That's ridiculous. Knocking on my door, trying to get me back in fear and guilt control system. Their version of it. It's not going to happen.